Welcome back to another episode of Aboutcast. It is me, Jordan. I'm excited to bring you back another episode, and we're continuing on our track with Miyamoto Musashi and doing one of his last pieces of work called the Dokodo, which essentially means the path of walking alone. And so in this podcast, you'll hear about the 21 precepts of the Dokodo and how to live life in the way that Miyamoto Musashi imagined it would be the best for the future generation. So we'll learn about life, we'll learn about jealousy, we'll learn about regret. We'll of course learn about swordsmanship and the tools that you're amazing. And all of that is in this episode. So one thing that I want to address is apologies for kind of being late on this. I had a whole bunch of life stuff going on. I was involved dating show, and it took about 2 weeks, and I was away for kind of my setup and everything, and it just wasn't right to record a few other things, which hopefully I'll be able to talk to you about that when DA clears up. And other than that, we're going to be hitting an episode of Musashi. Then we're going to do a leader analysis on Musashi here coming up soon, now that we've kind of gone over a lot of his works historically throughout this podcast. So without further ado, let's hit it. So like I just said, the Dokodo is 21 concepts or axioms that Musashi wrote down, and it fills the rule book that we're missing in life that we don't get handed to us when we're born. So starting with rule 1 or precept 1 is accept everything just the way it is. And for this precept, I think it is perfect the way that Musashi said it. One, because there's a lot of background and contextual influences when it comes to this first precept. And especially since it's number 1, you can imagine it's particularly important to put first. And the reason that I think it's here and what it actually means in a substantial way is that in life, you have things that happen to you, either be outwardly things or internal things. And essentially, you need to have something called amor fati, which is something that Friedrich Nietzsche coined. And I know you guys are rolling your eyes right now because I couldn't help but bring this guy up again. But essentially what it means is the love of one's fate, translated from Latin. And I think that this is perfect for this because what that mechanism does, and of course you need a dichotomy of this, and I think amor fati, the perfect antithesis of that is almost eager self-destruction and the way of recreating your present and future due to circumstances that happened in your past, either a reflection of weaknesses or adaptation of environment, things of that nature. But further on to the amor fati, what it is an amazing tool to let go of, which is one thing that you'll see in Dokodo. Here, it's about kind of eliminating desire or pleasure, which is classic, being that Musashi was a Zen Buddhist, which one of their first things or tenets is essentially the reason that suffering exists is because of desire. So the whole kind of nirvana is the elimination of suffering, which means the denial of desire. And so we can see a lot of this stuff coming out in the Dokodo, being that Musashi studied Buddhism for a large part of it. So going on to rule 2, we have do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Now, once again, you can see that this really rhymes with the first one, and especially in the context of Buddhism, where it is all about denial of desire, due to the fact that it pushes away the opportunity for suffering in principle or kind of the Buddhism. And I think that this is also a really strong one too, if you take it to kind of, our thinking, especially if you're not necessarily staunch in the ways of Buddhism, especially like Zen Buddhism. But what I think it does is it's about not getting attached to emotionally attached to, and especially just for the sake of it. And I think that this is another perfect way of avoiding, big tropes or holes in people's character, especially when it comes to pleasure or pursuit of pleasure. And that's, you guys will have heard, the classic book, The Obstacle is the Way, and things of that nature that kind of point the direction in a different way, saying difficulty is where you should be seeking. Seek difficult. But anyway, so we have rule 3 or precept 3, which is do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling. And I think this one, it's quite interesting. And I think there's a few others that talk about the tool sets, especially when it comes to being a warrior. But I think that this one is so ensconced Musashi's way of swordsmanship, especially if you guys followed along with the last podcast where we broke down Musashi's book, The Book of Five Rings, which he did right before he did this. And a lot of his style has to do with just absolute decisiveness no matter what. And I think that, liking this, I was thinking about this one and, translating it to experiences that I've had in my life. It's like the classic. So when learning about like basketball stuff like that, you sometimes either you forget, lapse, or slip in something, and you'll kind of be floating in no man's land. It's the perfect partial feeling of saying, I think I'm over there, but I'm also really sure. And I might be going in two opposite directions in my mind, or I should be in a different place. And what my coaches would always say is, if you're not sure where to go, decide where to go at that moment and then go 100. So essentially that's, a two-step mechanism of eliminating that partial feeling. So regardless of if you think you should be there or you're going there, but you're not 100% sure. So you won't be going there as purposefully as you knew without a doubt you would be. If you execute it with 100% effort or speed or diligence in a sense, then that helps eliminate that partial feeling, which is life and death when it comes to sword fights, but also gives you a large edge when it comes to conviction and resolve throughout daily life too, and long-term goals. So on number 4, and this one I really enjoy, it's think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. So essentially, I think that this is one of the amazing things if you are trying to about yourself and also kind of protect your ego throughout the world when it comes to things that you run into. So essentially the reason that I think that is because thinking lightly of yourself, it saves you from getting, ego deaths or essentially like pretty severe blows to who you believe you are as a person. And it also gives you the utmost runway to learn about the world, because essentially what you're saying is that, like Musashi, who used nature as his teacher throughout his samurai, years and swordsmanship years, he thought very deeply of the world. So he learned from the streams, the mountains, and the trees, the deer, and all of those natural things. But at the same time, if he didn't think so deeply of the world, he wouldn't have pulled certain things or aspects of movement or principles from the world if he didn't have this as detached from himself, as far as he can learn from everything because he's lowly and he has so much to learn. And then also thinking deeply of the world as something infinite library of knowledge that you can learn from, and then also adapt quickly to anything that slows you down in your long-term goals, because you don't have that ego tied to yourself. So you'll be more willing to kind of make progress and risk small chances of winning and learning with that principle. And so number 5, we have be detached from desire your whole life long. And so of course, this rhymes really, 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 really closely to the first couple that we had, and it is essentially classic Buddhism as far as, denying desire will eliminate suffering in your life. And I think that this is kind of just plainly put that way. And I definitely believe that if you, maybe that's an extreme way of looking at it, but I think that's just right on point with his Buddhist, education and philosophy. But there's definitely something to be said to limiting desire in a sense, because I like to say this a lot, and I think it makes a lot of sense. But essentially I say, you don't race full greyhounds. And essentially what that means is that the way of getting the most done or being the most ambitious or the most passionate is with not fully satiating yourself, whether that be not fully satiating yourself with food or, enjoyment and stuff like that. You always want to keep an edge, because I feel like that helps you push through life and through kind of the friction that you see in different things, whether it be, I'm going to the gym today, but it's actually kind of rainy right now. And if you're fully fed and you're you're never used to going out in the rain, then that is actually going to be way more friction than if you said, I always run to the gym, regardless of the temperature, regardless of the climate, in a t-shirt. And so you're used to kind of the elements. And so I think that is, really closely tied to what I was just talking about right then. So in number 6, it says, do not regret what you have done. And so once again, we're talking about an amor fati type of thing where you eliminate regret with just, being in love with your fate and destiny present and being present. And I think also this is super helpful, not only in normal life, but especially liking it to what Musashi was going through as a swordsman. When you do have regret, especially in like high stakes and quickly developing scenarios, your mind is on other things and it's a sunk cost. Whatever's happened is done. And what you should be utmost focused on is the present. And I think that is kind of a reminder of always be focused on the present, and be in love with your fate. But of course, dichotomously, also be passionately self-destructive. And never be jealous is number 7. And I think that this is also another kind of tie to eliminating desire, because jealousy is basically a fruit of the root of the tree that desire comes from, I believe. And it is not, seeing something you want and then seeing somebody else have it. I think that's a classically put that way. Of course, jealousy hurts you. Jealousy is a trap for, eliminating opportunities of growth for yourself and things of that nature. But once again, really holding strong to some of those Buddhist ties and removing desire. But anyway, so we're going on to 8, which is never let yourself be saddened by separation. And I think that this is another, I'm going to say this on the whole, but just because, this person was affected so deeply by that way of philosophy and religion. But I think that it is one of those things where when Musashi is talking about never let yourself be saddened by separation, it is this thing that Siddhartha said, the creator of Buddhism, where, something is never good nor bad. The man that is experiencing it, or the human being that is experiencing it, actually likens good and bad to a situation. And, separations happen, death happen. And of course, Buddhism, non-secular doesn't think this, but secular Buddhism believes that, there will be a rebirth of everything like that. So you shouldn't be saddened about something that is natural. And I think that, whether that's the separation of possessions, human beings, it is inevitable. People come and go. And you have to be, understand and accepting of the fate of nature in a sense. And I think that's what that's pulling on. And being resilient as one human being and not being too reliant on other people as well. So number 9, we have resentment and complaint are appropriate neither for oneself or others. And this one I think is perfect just in the fact that it's essentially saying suck it up. And nobody wants to hear you complain. And of course, this is also lamenting kind of resentment and complaint. Also, I think are relationships or emotions that have relationships with kind of jealousy and regret, saying that, fully distance yourself from feeling regret, resentment, and complaining. Because once again, just like jealousy, it's a waste of time. And there's nothing that can be good coming from complaining or being resentful. What you're doing is taking the opportunity away of you adapting from that situation in the present by you thinking about it in resentful or in a complete way. So we have number 10, which is do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of love or lust. So essentially, I think that this one is saying kind of, avoid desire again. And the reason that love and lust, I think, are super important is because it has such an adverse effect to your judgment, whether it be, the way that you pursue, your goals or what you believe your freedom is worth or your reputation, those all can be easily affected by love and lust. This is another way of distancing yourself and being fully autonomous. So we have number 11 now, which I think is pretty badass. It's something that I talked about in the Book of Five Rings as well, that Musashi says, and this one is saying all things have no. So of course this is specifically probably talking about swordsmanship, but also everything in the fact that there is an essence of strong practicality, Musashi. And especially in swordsman, when you are fighting people, one of the things that he notices or talks about a lot is taking the time to have no preference, whether it be, what hand you use, which sword with, short and long sword in his case, or other things. It is super important not to have preferences in the fact that you are limiting your ability to adapt to certain, if you don't, or if you do have preferences that you knowingly build, or even if you're not knowingly building them, those preferences can still limit you in your outcome, adapt or react to. And so we have 12, which is be indifferent to where you live. Once again, Musashi was quite a nomadic man. And this also has to do with kind of the desire of, wanting to live, work for an amazing daimyo that pays you a huge salary, which Musashi did do in his life that we'll talk about later in leader analysis podcast that we'll be doing about him. But also that, you should always avoid desire in this. And I think that, or even in the fact of kind of don't be hurt by separation, whether it be like we were talking about person, place, or thing. So once again, avoiding the desire, we're still on this Buddhism tip. 13 is do not pursue the taste of good food. And this is essentially another one of those desire things where, if you just constantly pursue the taste of good food, your morale is going to be hit when, you're not tasting that good food. And so it's about resiliency and avoiding suffering by denying desire at one. So 14, we have do not hold on to no longer need. And we'll see this once again in a different one in number 16 as well. But essentially this is just saying that you must be practical. And once again, like the classic saying that I love to say is the Fight Club reference that Edward Norton says, or I think this is actually, I guess they're both Edward, spoiler alert, but Brad Pitt, he says something about essentially the things you own, owning you. And I think that's a perfect example of that being that the possessions that you no longer need aren't doing anything but owning you. And so the moment that you don't need this thing, but you still carry it around, that thing owns you. And Musashi is saying, actually be wary of that and be very, very practical with the things that you carry. And of course, what that also means is be skilled in that you carry as well. So number 15 is do not act following customary belief. And I think that this is, something saying, think for yourself, be open-minded. And especially when, approaching things in your own way, you have to think about things in a manner of new discovery and experimentation to effectively execute on something that is holistically you in solving a problem. So number 16 is do not collect weapons or practice with weapons on what is useful. So once again, we're talking about, getting rid of things when they no longer suit the need. So I think this is a classic one where, swordsman and Musashi has seen a lot of people in a lot of ways of war, whether it be the staff, whether it be the drawing pole, whether it be the two swords, anything like that. Of course, Musashi's favorite, which is the wooden sword. It is all about practicality and being stripped of desire, whether it be the desire to have all of the weapons. It stems from a place of practicality %. So 17 is do not fear death. And so I think that there's two ways of looking at this. One, Musashi was a warrior his entire life, so fearing death would hinder him in the execution of the things he needs to do. Two, it could be a kind of a hearken to his Buddhism, but I'm not so sure about this point. And of course, I'm referring to Buddhism and its way of reincarnation. But I'm not too sure about this point because there's nothing else when it comes to, that quick, brief segment right there. But I think essentially this is also talking about the separation of the things as far as the separation of you and your life. All things, especially natural things like that, should be accepted fully. And I think that's what Musashi is talking about. Why be scared of this natural happening? It doesn't make much sense, to be honest. And it also means that you're not going to be regretting or resenting, complaining about things when you feel like, that is in danger. And number 18 is do not seek to possess either goods or fiefs for your old age. Once again, this homie is talking about get rid of the stupid stuff, get rid of riches. There's no need for those things in old age. You're not going to take them anywhere that you're going as far as when you're dead. And why collect things beyond what is useful to you? So you can see that there is obviously a repeated cadence in a lot of things, and I think it's important because all of them have some sort of grayscale into where does the line become drawn. And I think, with more axioms and idioms of these things, you can get a clear picture of who this person is, what they believe, where they think some things can be pushed a different way as far as, is separation as life, something that you should not be saddened by, of objects, places, things of that nature. Musashi is really helping illustrate what exactly he's mentioning and talking about. And so we have number 19, which is respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help, which essentially I think is amazing. Be reverent to the gods and ways of belief, but not count on their help. And I think this is also kind of hearkening back to think lightly of oneself, but deeply of the world. Have so much respect for the things outward of you, but always rely on yourself to learn, grow, progress, because it doesn't make much sense too. And, this is kind of like logic about the, regardless if they were that what if should then eliminate that for reliable source, a source of like in a variable in equation. How am I going to solve this problem? It always should the thing I control the most, which is me in this scenario, and rely on that the most when solving a problem. And I think that's what Musashi is talking about. And also I think that, in my criticism, I think that in modern there's a lot of, God helped with this, or, God gives you gives his soldiers the hardest times that can handle it. And I think once again, this is just saying that you have to be okay with the situation you're in. Of course, amor fati, have no regrets, but also know that you are in this situation to help yourself out, and nobody else will come helping you when doing. And so that's what I think 19 is talking about. And we have 20, which is you may abandon your own body, but you must preserve your honor. And I think that this is mentioning or likening back to the extreme thoughts and, seriousness that the Japanese people have when it comes to honor. And it is one thing that lasts longer than your body, is what Musashi is saying. And the word and the name that you make for yourself in ideal situations should live longer than the living spirit of yourself, or kind of the living functioning of your body, due to, the way that you honored others, the way that you honored yourself, and so on. And so that is what he's talking. And so 21 is never stray from the way. And this is another one that I love saying. And if we've talked about this or you've had a conversation with me, and I'm sure I've said it on this podcast before, but essentially I say the path is, and essentially what that means is in likening it to precept number 21 is it'll take forever to go the path, or not forever, but your lifetime, your amount of time. And it's almost genuinely you need to pursue it due to the fact of pursuing the path. At least for me, is obviously living up to those precepts that Musashi is saying, perspective, but also being more capable than you were yesterday, being more virtuous as well, harkening that back to. But essentially what that is, with that goal, you'll never make it in your lifetime. And it might sound sad and bleak, but once again, that Chinese proverb that says the journey is the reward and not mission, I think that's perfectly put right there. With your pursuit of this amazing life's work, the pain that it causes, the thing that is, that's also something that a lot of greats have also said, and I think a lot of people share as well, where the really amazing people at things are in love with the process. Specifically, like Kobe Bryant's perfectly in love with the process and great. And, that's where you can always pursue your hat on, because it'll never go away as long as you're pursuing it. But Once again, the path is lifelong. I hope you guys enjoyed Dokudo, the 21 precepts of Musashi, being that this was his last text and this was a week before he died. Amazing. The guy's obviously a legend in history as a swordsman, as a philosopher, as an artist, all of those amazing things, and also a writer. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I already said that, but I really do. I really enjoying kind of Musashi. Excited to do the full leadership breakdown of him. If you guys have any suggestions or leaders that you guys want, please do keep doing an amazing job at Aboutcast.com or anywhere else. Wherever you're listening to us, let us. I'll be seeing you guys next time. Peace.